Jason. Thank you so much for joining Kinky Knots Cafe. Proactive is the way. If possible, it'd be great if you can take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience and share with our audience your personal and professional background.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, and thanks for having me. My name is Jason Fareas. I am the host of a podcast called My Madness Method. I am also the director for a transportation company and a small business owner. But I'm also coming up on 2 decades in recovery from substance abuse, and I'm a little over 2 years sober from alcohol. I am what people quote unquote call a poly addict. But I've clawed my way from there, and I have found a better way. I found things worth living for, and that's where my podcast came in. I had this story in my head, and I struggle every day, but I am on the other side of it. And my desire is to find that one person that's looking for somebody to whom they can connect and know that they're not alone in this struggle in the story, and know that it is possible to get out, but also not to try to uh, give anybody any visions of grandeur, because it's not easy, and there is no such word as just. Nothing is just. There's a process here. Um, so yeah, so that's who I am. I'm a busy guy, and I'm trying to do the best I can.
Wow, that's a pretty interesting story to hear about someone who came out of, I call it the depths of despair,
Oh, you're right.
right? And
You're right.
just was able to overcome that. And you see so many people. It's funny because we were talking about where you were originally from, but out in California, they have this particular area where there's a lot of homeless people,
Mhm.
and they're on drugs and living on the streets, and you can just they call them the zombies,
Oh yeah.
is what I was hearing about. And they just were really couldn't lift themselves up out of that
Mhm.
depths of despair. So to hear that you were able to overcome that, that is phenomenal. Talk to me a little bit, because it sounds like you have a background story that kind of got you there.
Mhm.
Can you talk to me a little bit about, like, how did you how did you get into that space? How did you get into that space?
Well, that's a interesting question, because it was timeline wise, it was very fast, but it seemed like it was a very slow descent.
Okay.
But ultimately, it was a lot of moving when I was younger, a lot of being handed off between family member and family member, while, you know, my parent or my aunts or uncles or whomever was figuring out their life. I was kind of the ping pong ball that existed amongst that. And I wasn't the type of kid that was resilient that way. So instead of ultimately getting older and accepting the fact that they were doing the best they could, and I didn't live a terrible upbringing, right? But I saw it as, well, wow, why doesn't anybody love me? My real father was never around. That always lived in the back of my head. My uncle and I got very close when I was young, so he became like my father figure. And then he went and lived his life, and but I was young, so I still saw that as, yet somebody else abandoning me. Right. Um, when my mother needed me to go stay with my grandmother for a while she kind of got went and figured out life a bit, I saw that again as being handed off unwanted. And then when grandmother gave me back, I felt the same way. So there was these emotions that were bottled up, of feelings of inadequacy and not being wanted. And
Mhm.
then to boot, excuse me, in my younger years, we did a lot of moving. So almost every year in elementary and even in high school, every year I went to a new school. Okay. So I had to hurry up. I had to make friends. I had to figure out who I was going to be that day, to try and just assimilate and find friends. And ultimately, what I learned are the kids that are doing the less positive activities in a day were much easier to connect with because we all had some kind of sad or similar story that led us towards each other, you know. And then, hey, you guys, let's smoke some weed or whatever it was, and I didn't even see what weed looked like until I was just before I turned 17, I believe. So I mean, I was that kind of sheltered kid.
Right.
Um, but once that kicked in, it was, oh, the man, what else? What else? And then, a buddy of mine turned up and introduced, excuse me, introduced me to methamphetamines, and man, that was giving me that charge that man, I feel amazing. I can take on the world. And admittedly, in looking back, I had undiagnosed ADHD, and the meth actually quieted all the noise in my head. Much like, Adderall or any of these other medications that are ADHD related, I also was able to focus, and I was able to rest. It was the craziest. Like this drug settled me,
Okay.
and I never paid attention to the fact I was getting addicted. I just knew I felt better
Right.
in the craziest sense. And then addiction just did what addiction does, and all the fun and the party and the good times started becoming far and few between, and the addiction was what was left. So now this kid that's just on a hunt for acceptance and love from literally anybody that'll give it to him now has an addiction to a substance that allows him to go around and really just collect that emotion, right? Because if you have that drug, people give you the attention you're looking for, and the
When you
addiction
say the
piece.
attention, what do you mean when you have that drug? People
Well,
give you
when you're the guy that has that drug and you have a lot of it and you're surrounded by people that like it, I'll be
okay.
honest with you, I was a terrible drug dealer. Okay.
Okay.
In that I would give it away. I mean, I just wound up with so much of it because see, here's the thing, if you do anything, you should do it right. You either be good or be good at it, right? Like that was the motto I lived by at this age. And if you're gonna do anything, you should do it to the best of your ability. And I was really good at it. Um, so I would make all the money I needed and just have so much. I would just give it away, because
Right.
people wanted to be with me and hang around with me, and so now I have what felt like a family. So I was put up on that pedestal that I had always wanted when I was younger. Now I'm able to just buy it, I guess, in a way. You know what I mean? It wasn't using actual money, but in reality, I was purchasing the filling of the hole that existed.
Wow. Wow. I can't even begin to understand. I'm trying, I'm sitting here, I'm trying to understand, and I understand the fact, because even with my own children, I have four children myself. And one of the things, I'm a single mom, and one of the things is trying to maintain stability. We've moved a lot. Fire, house burned down,
Oh, I'm so
like
sorry.
it's okay. We are alive. Hello.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm like, I'm alive,
Right,
So
right.
we're alive. So I don't
You
complain
know what?
about that.
Good for you because I'm sure that's not an easy perspective to have after having gone through that. It's very easy to get caught up in the why me's and the oh lords and so
Hmm.
good for you. Like
Yeah.
I'm proud of you. Good job.
Oh, thank you.
Because
Thank
that is
you.
not an easy perspective to maintain.
No, it's not. And people, I want people to understand. I always tell folks, always put yourself in someone else's shoes and ask,
Yes. Mhm.
how would you react when you're going through this particular life experience, right?
Yeah.
And so, some people do break down, but I just keep bringing everything back to home.
Hmm.
The very simplistic things just really move me. And the fact
Yeah.
that I'm living, the
Right.
fact that I have children who love me and I have the ability to love them back and take care of them as a woman, as a mom, for me, that's really all I need. And so I value very very small things. But I think I do that because I came up from a pretty good upbringing. I had an amazing father, amazing mom as well, who really loved me and cared for me. And so I wanted to continue that, right? I do
Yes.
that the best of my ability, no matter even if my life is, because right now it's a hot mess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
Yeah,
is
I'm with
all
you.
over the place.
But you
I
know
can't
what?
even.
That's what real life is, though. It's accepting it's a hot mess. And you know the other thing and I love the fact that you said that, but we very easily overlook the massive blessings we have in our lives every day. We're alive. We take that for granted. Like you didn't have to wake up, you know,
No.
and your babies couldn't be loved like you love them. You know, like there's and that counts. That
Right,
counts. You know, the things we have mean nothing, you know. I
right.
mean, but we place this emphasis and importance on it. And and you're right, you know, we have kids that we can love and family that hopefully loves us as well. And,
Yes.
you know, we wake up tomorrow and today and the next day after and, you know, so
Yes, yes, that is so true. So that is phenomenal. I thank you so much for sharing your story. I
mhm,
wanted to ask you because this month we are focusing on the principle highlighted in Eric
mhm,
Thomas's book, You Owe You. I don't know if you received any of the notes that I had sent over, but I'll give you just a brief overview.
sure.
So so in Eric Thomas's book, he states that when you take ownership, you become the CEO of your life, which sounds like what you did. You were just like, "Hey, I'm about to take ownership of my life. I have got to get this together, right?" And
Mhm,
so, on your way to success, he truly believes that if you want to find success, you can't make excuses, and you must constantly work on perfecting yourself. You know,
mhm,
1% at a time, right?
right.
Overcoming those bad habits 1% at a time. But he shared this message, and all I kept thinking about when I was reading about this particular principle that he lives by is what about the people who struggle with trying to find themselves?
Mhm,
What if what you know about yourself, right? Like you were sharing about your upbringing,
mhm,
placed you in a placed you in a position where you believe that you were not worthy, you were not validated, that you don't have the tools, the resources, and the support to even take the steps you need to take ownership.
yeah.
What is causing you to think this way. And so, from my perspective, I'm a proponent of finding the root cause so that we can
Yes.
solve a problem. We're so good at putting a band-aid on something and
Right.
pacifying an issue, but solving the problem so we can truly progress in life. And in our world today, I did notice that there's a great deal of people, they lean on a negative narrative,
Mhm,
and when they are attempting to navigate life where they just don't know where to begin, I want to equip them with those tools and resources. And so that's what this particular podcast is all about. So I landed on a book. Our book focus this month is Choose Your Story, Change Your Life, Silence Your Inner Critic, and Rewrite Your Life from the Inside Out by Kendra Hall. Have you ever heard of that book before?
I have not, but I'll check
You
it
have
out.
not? Yeah,
Yeah.
check it out. Check it out. So she shares that it is important that we develop the right narratives about ourselves to
Mhm,
help in our continuous growth and development. Essentially, she shares that it's the stories that we tell ourselves that can lead us to success
mhm.
or failure. So I'm going to ask the question. I'll open it up so you can just help me to better understand the narratives within your life. But what are your thoughts with regards to this statement? And do you believe that the reason we rise or fall is due to the stories in which we have curated within our minds?
I excuse me. I absolutely agree with that. You touched on a great point. It's getting to the root cause, right? So my addiction got so out of control at one point at the towards the end there of substances that we were homeless. We slept under the tongue of a trailer in a trailer park that I would sneak into once the people that lived in it were asleep. That's how bad it got. And every now and then, um, the girlfriend that was with me, now my wife, yeah, we would find somewhere to stay, we'd get a hotel, whatever the case may. Anyway, so the day that she told me she was pregnant was the last day that I touched substance. And it was because I knew that I didn't want for my child what I felt of their father not being around. There's no way I was bringing a child into this world as an addict. Um, and that became my driving force. Okay. Now, what I didn't deal with was root cause, but what I found was a reason for now, to need to get it together. Okay. Um, I knew that my experiences in my past were not going to dictate my future. So we came home, we stayed with my grandmother, got clean, got to work. And interestingly, I used that as the fuel. I didn't have time because now I had a child on the way. So I didn't have time to necessarily get into the minutia of recovery, right? It was just I have things I have to do now. I've got a child to support for, which means I need to get a place, which means I need to get a job, and so on. And I created a checklist for myself, and I ultimately got ourselves out of that position. Now, this is good and bad because what wound up happening is I created my child and my circumstances, my reason, and I never dealt with the core. I never dealt with the why. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where my alcoholism kicked in, is because life was coasting. I mean, I went from a homeless guy to working a night shift from 5:30 at night until 6 a.m. And then I was in school getting my degree from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I slept 2 hours a day for 3 years. Okay.
Wow.
Like there was no time to I blew 10 years. I needed to make that up.
Right.
But what I never dealt with was the whys.
Mm.
And it led me to drinking, and it led me into, recovery rooms and rehab. And then I started dealing with the why. Now, mind you, all of my efforts and energies, I mean, they got me successful in business. I'll be honest with you, the drug world, I did very well in business, and it was interestingly transferable, you know.
Right.
Um, so that got me to levels that I wouldn't have expected. I made it to being a directors of companies and consultant on startups, and that just felt like what I was supposed to do. And I never got to dealing with the core issues, and they will bubble up, you know. And to your point, the reason why they bubbled up is because the internal narrative remained negative. Okay. The internal narrative was still, can we cuss? Okay. Okay. Hey, uh,
Just a couple. As long
right,
as
right,
it's
right.
not a
Well,
whole,
well,
then I gotta mark it explicit.
no, my internal narrative was you're still a piece of shit, you know. The core of you is rotten, and what you're doing is just going through the motions because I was taking care of everybody and not me. And
Right.
that was my constant internal narrative that don't get too proud of yourself. You're probably going to F this up, so just keep going until you do.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the crazy thing is I've also lost jobs because of that internal narrative. I know I have. That may not have been the circumstance itself, but I mean, my alcoholism and my internal narrative caused me to either lose opportunities or to lose positions or, um, but in dealing with getting to the core of things, it helped me, one, stop chasing the money because that's a horrible, horrible groove we get in. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you get some, you want more, right? But
Yes.
the problem is when you start chasing success because of money,
Mhm.
it never becomes enough, you know.
Mhm.
And again, that internal narrative of you're not worthy, you're not good enough. Well, I need to make more money. Why aren't I good enough? You know, so now your professional life is now tied down to your poor internal narrative,
Mm.
and they just start feeding on each other. And dealing with my core issue of I wasn't abandoned. I was loved. These were just people doing the best they could for me, but that took me as an adult looking back to figure that out. And that helped me change my internal narrative. And now the anxiety is less. Now I mean I still I still live with it every day. You know, we all have stress and anxiety to some degree, but when it got to be the worst, when my professional life and my horrible internal narrative came crashing together, you
Mhm.
know, I would have days where I'd lock myself in my office and sit under my desk and just freak out. Like my anxiety got that bad. Um, and you know, in my head, you know, a couple of drinks would help calm that down. And just like the last story, the substance abuse, the alcoholism,
Mhm.
was quick, but it helped me feel better, you know.
Right.
And but it's getting to the core of who we are and accepting the fact that hey, bad things happen,
Mhm.
and it's really our perspective and our approach that's going to get us through it. You know, just perfect case, your house. You know, you had a fire, but yet here you are, and you're still moving, and you're still going, because you you didn't allow a negative internal narrative to snatch you up. You
Mm.
know, um, and
Absolutely.
that's really what I'm hoping for people is to just, hey, what what made you today is okay. If it's good, bad, or indifferent, like just embrace it as best you can. Get to the core of your issues. Like you know, it's easy to mask it and push it down, but take it on, take it head on, and accept it. This is who I am. You know, like for my people in recovery, recover out loud. Don't let anybody tell you that you're less than. You know, don't let anybody tell you it's okay. Just do better. Keep doing better. You'll be all right.
I like that. Recover out loud. So many folks recover in silence.
Right.
And I'm not saying like you have to tell all your business, but
Mhm.
when you are going through some tough times, and we were talking about this earlier with
Mhm.
regards to the podcast, at first I was sharing that I started with Facebook, sharing my
Right.
thoughts, my perspectives, etc. But when I started the podcast, I was able to share, my faults because that's what
Mhm.
proactive is the way is all about. I
Mhm.
wasn't proactive, right?
Yeah.
I didn't take life the way that I should have in order to find success. And now here I am at 45 trying to figure shit out,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so, so it's that's a very, very good point. The other point that I really like that you shared was, you know, understanding that we all are going through this plight in life.
Mhm.
And it is up to us to take ownership of it and
Mhm.
try to find a way through it, not around it, but
Right.
through it, right? And so I like what you shared because a lot of people will look at their plight in life and they will look at it like, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm going to mess this up. And they develop additional internal narratives that, on top of the narratives that they already had, and then end up doing something very detrimental that may ultimately lead to their death or lead to them killing someone or hurting someone. And one of the things that I always tell folks is that go through your journey
Mhm.
and try to lean on to resources, try to find a way out of the situation because your story, which is what you're sharing right now, is going to be the key to helping someone else. I call
Right.
ourselves gods,
Mhm.
guides of destiny.
Yeah.
We all serve as a guide to help the next individual not do bad,
Right.
but to lead them on the right path.
Hmm.
because we can do bad all by ourselves. We don't need no help.
Yeah, I don't need help.
I don't need your help doing bad. Okay. I don't need your
Right,
help telling me I need to eat a donut. No,
right.
you need to, I need your warning. I need your advice. I need your
Yeah.
guidance. And so all need to have, we need to be mindful of that. But your plight in life is so important, and when I hear about people committing suicide or just, giving up on life, it really hurts me because I think to myself, no, that is not the way. Go through
Well,
it.
it's just like if you think about it, have you ever told your kids something and they're not listening to you because you're
Never.
mom, right? Right.
Never.
Well, I think we inherently don't like to be told what to do, okay? It's just at the core, like we don't like to be told, but if you can just you can hear what I learned through my story, you can absorb that, and that's really why I took this angle is because I don't want to see anybody shaking a finger at anybody about anything because, what's the old saying? One at me is three at you. You got three pointing back at you. Like, you
Mhm.
can't tell anybody how to do what they're dealing with. But if you can
Right.
just hear and assimilate a little of what I went through to what you're going through, at least it's worth hanging on. I hate to think that there's people out there that want to die, excuse me, because I did in fact reach a point that I will get to in my podcast. There's going to be a whole episode about it. But the day that I accepted I was going to die an addict, and I said it outwardly, and I told my girlfriend like, "Hey, you got to go home. This is how I die." You know, I
Mm,
remember accepting that, and I hate for that for anyone, and having been as far down as I got, I really got to know people when they were going through their hardest of times. When you wind up homeless on the streets of Las Vegas, you meet other homeless people in Las Vegas, and they're good people. They're okay. They just made some bad decisions or fell on some hard times, and I carry that with me, even as I get, more entrenched and evolved into the corporate world, it helps me understand everybody.
mm,
It gave me a new perspective on how to not be a leader, but just try to be a guide,
mm,
try to, I don't, I don't, I don't want you to follow me because you have to. I want you to want to because you, in fact, want to. There's a difference
mm.
between have to and want to, you
Correct.
know. And what I'm trying to reach people about is I want them to want to get better and be better. And again, just to sit here and try to be a guide for them, you
Mhm.
know. Um,
Yeah, I think that's a part of being, our purpose in life is to uplift
yeah,
others and to build the next generation to be stronger. Because I find it interesting when individuals try and hold individuals back and
yeah,
don't help them to grow. Because I keep thinking to myself, I want you to know that that is one of the facets. It's one of the main facets within our life because we have to lead the next generation to
mhm,
success. We have to lead the next generation so that of our for our survival
right.
as a human race. And so it's so important that we're mindful of that. So it sounds like you developed some positive narratives that helped you to be where you are today. Can you talk to me a little bit about some of the certain principles that you lean on every day to help you in managing your life, your business, and how do you rely how well, let me take it back. How has relying on those principles helped or hindered you?
Oh, well, okay. So there's two really strong principles that I think they've always existed. I don't know if I've ever put them out into the stratosphere or not, but one of them, excuse me, is if I'm not training my replacement, okay, let's just take the business aspect first. If I'm not training somebody to be better than me, then I'm not successfully leading anyone. I am holding people back. I want everybody to be better than me at whatever it is I'm doing. If I'm teaching you something, I'm teaching you and I want you to do it better. You
Mhm.
know, I want you to want my job. I want you to want to do better for you, you know, just because I have I've built this in myself of, one of the only ways we're going to get better is if we do better, you know. So my desire for people is to just be better than me at any point. And now even in dealing with my kids, now of course every father wants his son to be better, but like I don't hide this story from my kids. Like they know that they can listen to this podcast anytime they want. They said they're not ready. I've explained to them what it's about, and that's okay, you know. But I want my kids to be better. So sorry, excuse me. I
You're
want
okay.
my kids to be better than I was, but I want them to understand who I was. That you know, uh, I don't want them to be built in a vision in my head for my kids. I want them to be the best of whoever it is that they're supposed to be and know that their dad accepts himself for how he is. But this is why I tell you the things I tell you. It's because I want you to be better and make better decisions. I would be a fool to think that everybody I tell, hey, don't do it this way, you should do it that way. I'd be a fool to think that that's how it's going to go down every time. But in business and in my personal life, if I can just share with you my experience, you
Mhm.
take with that what you will,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's what it is. Like what you said, it's very difficult. You can't force people to
right.
go a specific direction, right? But
Yeah.
you can guide, and
Right.
you can guide through your story,
Yeah.
right? And
Well,
I'm glad that you're honest with your kids about that. I tell my
it's
kids all the time, like, yeah, I didn't do things right.
right. But this is who I am.
But this is who I am. Yes, yes.
I even sit my kids down every now and then and remind them, like, look, guys, I love you. You guys are amazing.
Mhm.
And I'm doing the best I can. And you guys got to remember that I don't have a lot of examples to go from. You know what I mean? So bear with me. I'm still figuring this out, and
Yes.
they're 17 and 14. And I'm like, you guys, I'm still figuring this out,
Still but you're going to figure it out. I tell folks, we are all, or we all should be consummate learners. There
Oh
is
yeah.
never in a day when we're all going to have shit figured out. I
Right.
mean, we should strive to be that way,
Hmm.
so that we internally can continue that growth, that development, overcoming,
Hmm.
but because if you don't do that, you're going to become stagnant. And
Oh
when
yes.
you become stagnant, folks don't realize this, everything begins to go south. You
Hmm.
start, you'll essentially die,
Yeah.
honestly.
Oh yeah. Complacency is the first step
Complacency,
of failure.
it's a failure and death.
Yeah, yeah. You
you
know,
know, uh-huh.
the one other approach I take besides, just guiding people to be better, the other one is my understanding everybody's 100% is different. Okay?
Mhm.
You know, like when my kids, well, what about him and what about him? Well, he's different. He's not you. You cannot project your expectations of yourself on somebody else. Okay? And we can't we can't give up on folks just because they're not living up to the expectation we've built in our head. You need to understand that your 100% is your 100%,
Mhm.
right? But your 100% might be a zero in a certain category. This person is doing the best they can with who they are and the tools they're armed with, and if we just remember that. Like, if we stop projecting our expectations of ourself and our surroundings on people that aren't ourselves or our surroundings, I think at the end of the day, we're going to be better for it just because, like I said, everybody's 100% is different. Everybody brings a little something different to the table. That has helped me out drastically in my business. just
Well,
in my professional life, knowing and accepting like, hey, yeah, you might do this and that, not exactly the way I envisioned, but these other things you're killing it. Like, so let's just hone in on that and harness that, man. This is where you excel and you're killing it here. Let's focus on this. Don't give up on them because they didn't get activity A right when activity B is exceeding your expectations. Don't sleep on activity B.
right, right. Yes, that is a good point. That is a good point, and actually, you just gave me another topic that I'd probably want to discuss in the future, focusing on folks' strengths versus their weaknesses,
Yeah.
and finding value in that. That's a very good point. So let me ask you this: if you had to leave a message for the next generation, what are some lessons or principles you would leave to ensure that they stayed on the right path to success?
If I had just one,
Mhm.
it's okay. It's okay. And I know that that's so like kind of cheesy but the reality is it's okay to not be okay. It's okay that you made a bad decision because guess what? You made a decision.
Mhm.
It's okay to struggle and it's okay to make mistakes. Just accept it, learn from it. Let's keep it rolling. That's really like my biggest message is it's okay to be you and everything that means. Don't let anybody tell you that any part of what you're doing, within reason, of course, I should, I mean, but the reality is it's okay to do the best you can and it not be enough sometimes. you
Mhm.
know don't let that ruin you. It's all right.
Well, and that
Yeah.
yeah,
Hey.
I know you think that that's just a very simplistic thought. I think we need to get comfortable with simpler solutions. I
Yeah.
think when we complicate solutions, folks get a little jaded and they're like, well, now, okay, now how do I start all of that? But you are right. It is okay. It is okay to go through the struggles that you have. It's okay to not know and to have to seek and find the answer. I think
Mhm.
if we learn to be a little bit more authentic within
Yeah.
ourselves about who we are, what we have, the capabilities to do, not do, etc., life would be a little bit less stressful, I
Mm.
think. But when you have to try and keep up with the Joneses and you're always concerned about what people think and, starting to build those narratives that I'm not good enough,
Right.
then that's, when you start to see yourself go down that spiral into the abyss and find it very difficult to raise yourself up. So I like that. It's okay. And then when you realize that it's okay and you've got an issue, because of course we have to have that level of awareness,
Right.
start moving forward. And it's
Yeah.
that simple. It's okay. Figure it out
Yeah.
and let's move forward. Okay.
Right.
And just keep those three things just constantly on repeat because the reality they will be on repeat because every
Yeah.
facet of your every
Yeah.
facet of your
Hmm.
life is going to change. You're going to, I remember when I first went to college and then, oh my gosh, I'm headed to New York to work. Oh, that's this Midwest girl going to New, oh my God, I'm pregnant, just all
Right.
these different changes that, happen in your life and you are going to flub, right?
Right.
But it's great that there are people like you out there, people like me who are open to telling our story,
Yeah.
to help folks know that hey, there this is life.
Right.
It's
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Try your best with what you have.
Yeah. Well, we
Take
we definitely
yes.
need to quit putting value on other people's opinions of us, right? Like you need, and that's the thing that kind of kills me is that people say whatever they want to say, right? We're the
Mhm.
ones putting the value on how we interpret it.
Ex-
You say whatever you want about me because bad publicity is still publicity. You know what I mean? Like, and
mhm.
I've been that way since I was a teenager. Like, oh, you're talking bad about me? Cool, you're still talking about me. You know, so
Right.
we have to stop putting value on the way people are projecting their opinion of us, right? We need to just worry about our own internal narrative. Don't worry about what everybody else says, because if you start listening to them, your internal narrative is going to change on your own. You
It
know,
is.
you just
It will.
control the voice in your head and don't worry about what other people are saying. Just be happy they're talking about you. That means you're living.
Yeah, it is. You know, if I can just, I'm going to give one point to that. It's okay to hear folks. And I'll say it because every day I have someone who has something to say about something I'm doing.
Sure.
And and I'm okay with that. But what I like is I like to get that perspective because maybe there is something that they do see that I'm not fully taking in.
Right.
But I'm not going to own it
Yeah.
in terms of digesting it and allowing it to infiltrate my mind to a point where I feel like I am less.
Mhm.
I want to leverage that feeling. Sometimes that negativity can help fuel you to find an improvement because maybe there is a little bit of truth there.
Well,
Um,
that's a good so something that I teach my team, regardless of where I'm at, is throw me your worst idea, okay? And then let's tear it apart because at the core, there's probably something good there. You just overthought it.
mhm,
Okay. I don't care what it is. If it's the craziest thing, let me hear it. And
yeah,
then let's break it down and find, oh, this is what you meant. All right, let's roll with this. So to your point, hearing somebody's negative perspective, if you weed through it and get rid of all the garbage that's irrelevant, you might find at the core, like, oh, hey, wait a minute, there's a point here.
yeah.
I'm gonna learn from this. I'm gonna take that with me. You
Take
know,
that piece.
right,
Yes,
right,
yes.
right,
Those
right. So
little, they're all there's little nuggets
right, right,
in
right. But don't.
everything, but you have to have the gift of discernment. And I think
Yeah,
we're not taught that in school to have that
no.
gift of discernment to really understand what are some of the things that I should take in, I should hold on to,
Hmm.
and then what are the things I need to throw over my shoulder like salt and just say, that's not for me.
Well,
But never,
you
uh-huh.
take out the emotion and you go with the fact.
Very good. There you go.
You know,
Bingo. Yes. Yes. Bingo. All right. All right. This was great.
good.
This was
Good.
great,
I'm glad I
Jason.
had
Yes, I
fun.
truly appreciate you taking the
Yeah. Hey.
time
No,
to
thank
meet with
you.
me. Yeah, yeah.
This was great.
Well, good, good. Well, thank you so much for being here on Kinky Knots Cafe. Proactive is the way.
Right on. Thank you so much. Let's talk soon.
All right, we'll do. Bye
All right.
bye.